Repat Stories. This week we're going to be talking to Miss Kacy Gardner, Chief Storyteller at the Storyteller Agency. She's going to tell us about her time growing up in Jamaica and her time working and studying in the US. And now she's back in Jamaica doing great things in PR and marketing for corporate Jamaica. So Kacy, hi, welcome. Today we want to talk to you, of course, about like your journey, your repatriation story, and what that means to you. So, first of all, can you tell us about your time growing up in Jamaica? Like, what was that like?
Thanks for having me. Well, as I said, Jamaica is such a beautiful country. We have everything here, I think. So, I loved growing up here. I mean, I was the youngest. I had two older brothers, so I spent a lot of my time trying to keep up with them, climbing trees. We used to go to the beach. We used to sail a lot. My dad had a boat. It was just the best way to grow up, really. And funny enough, we didn't have like everything, because in those days, 'cause I'm a lot older than I look, in those days.
That's a flex. She's flexing on you right now. Okay.
Yeah, we didn't get to it's not like now where you just go to Amazon and get everything. There were restrictions about what we could import. But we had each other and we had the outdoors, and it was fun. It was great growing up. I actually grew up around this area, Golden Triangle.
So the Golden Triangle is it's prime real estate, right? So is it fair to establish that growing up, right, you weren't wanting, you weren't sort of like, you had a comfortable time growing up, and we're asking these questions to get to why we'd leave. Okay, so it was fair to say we had a good, comfortable.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was an architect. My mother at the time was a management consultant,
Mm-hmm.
and she had her own business. And she got an opportunity to go to work for the UN, and she just decided to take it. It was a chance in a lifetime kind of opportunity. So it was kind of a culture shock for me to go from, running around in my barefoot or slippers to dealing with, record snowstorms. And I went to a private school in Central Park West. People were driving Ferraris and Lambos and, going to the Hamptons and Aspen for the summer. So it was definitely a culture shock moving from here.
Wait, so pause. So take us back. So your mom got the opportunity to work for the UN, and then was that in New York at the time, or how did you get to New York from here? Like, and what age was that?
She got an opportunity to go to New York,
Mm-hmm.
and I was 16 at the time. So I had just finished, just graduated, and I was actually in sixth form.
Got you.
Yeah, I graduated from St. Andrew High School for girls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah.
So that's saying, so you essentially got to the point of high school in Jamaica. So we have fifth form, which is about 15, 16, and then sixth form. So at that point, you're in the US, and you said you have a culture shock, and I guess, so did you want to go? Like, was it exciting before you went? Was it exciting for you or not really? What did you feel?
It was. I was excited.
Yeah.
To have a new experience, and I don't know, I guess maybe I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, kind of thing. And I didn't really have a choice. I mean, I wasn't old enough to stay here by myself, and the whole idea was my mother wanted me to finish. She wanted me to do this program called IB, International Baccalaureate, and then go to liberal arts school. But like I said, I always wanted to be an artist. That was kind of my passion. So I used to spend hours painting in my room, drawing, coming up with creative ideas. So I was always creative. And so I felt kind of pigeonholed when she was like, well, you need to go to this uptown private school. And we can't call it uptown because really upper echelon school, and study anthropology and Japanese, and go to a liberal arts college and do something boring.
Mm-hmm.
And being in New York kind of just opened me up even more to my creativity, because I was doing art classes. I was learning different languages. I was meeting other people from all other parts of the world. Museums were on every block, so I would go and spend hours just walking around in the museums and looking at the artifacts. National Museum of History. I can't remember the name of it, but it was right on my street where I went to school. And then of course there was MoMA. You know, like we had everything met. Everything was there. So it just made me want to be an artist even more. And so I kind of cut that short and went to Pratt in Brooklyn, which didn't make my mother very happy because she was like, you know, but we had this plan. And there I studied illustration, particularly children's book illustration. I'd always wanted to do that. When I was deciding where I wanted to go, Cecil Cooper, one of my mother's friends, and he's passed away, but he at the time was like one of the biggest inspirations for me because he was living his dream. He was an artist, he was painting, he was making money from it, and he was teaching. And I thought, oh wow, you know, this guy has it all together. I could be like him.
Right.
But I wanted to tell children's stories, particularly because that was one of the things I was passionate about as a child, reading, drawing. I used to actually write stories too as a child, young adult, you know, like Babysitter's Club type stuff. Yeah, and I mean, I would just sit and write stories. So it was something that I was passionate about, visually interpreting those stories. But when I got to art school, it was a little scary for me because I was the only woman in my class, in my cohort. And I was the only black woman. There were black men, but I was the only black woman. So I was already a minority. And I only had one female professor who kind of mentored me. But I quickly realized that there weren't many opportunities at the time for me in that space because it was very competitive.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like the traditional like graphic design, you get a job. It was kind of more like a freelance kind of situation. So you'd be going around shopping your book and negotiating contracts, and it was very intimidating for me. But I loved the school. I loved Pratt. One of the great things about Pratt is that you learn all different things. So I learned graphic design, art direction, you know, drawing, painting was just a big part of our education. So I was able to learn a lot of things and do a lot of things. So even though I was kind of very intimidated by the idea of being a children's book illustrator living in New York, I was able to do other things. But also one of the challenges, and I didn't even realize it at the time, was that I didn't have a visa. So I was like, how am I going to do this? Most people that are here, they're nationals.
Right.
So they can do it, but I don't even have a work visa. How is this going to work? And I mean, I had transitioned from the diplomatic visa to F1, to the student visa. So I quickly had to like shop around and figure out what I was going to do, right? So, you know, as you know, you have that 1 year after graduation. So I got a job at a publishing company, one of the biggest publishing companies in New York. And it was a rude awakening for me, being a black woman from Jamaica, from this island country. Not to say that they were prejudiced, but yeah.
But they were prejudiced?
Yes. Like we had talked about, it was almost like a you know, Anna Wintour kind of, what's the movie? Devil Wears Prada kind of vibe. You know, getting drunk at lunchtime. Not me, my superior. I was getting drunk at lunchtime. I remember an incident where, like I said, I had a family emergency, and they were just like, well, you know, you can't afford to have a family emergency. And I quickly just decided that this was not for me. So I got another opportunity working in a fashion merchandising setup. which was much more interesting, believe it or not, even
Mhm.
though, and my whole plan in my mind was I was going to work on my book, work on my portfolio, and shop it around while working at these places. So I did that, but there was a lot of economic turmoil in America at the time. I think this was like 2001. So they had to like make cuts for us. So even though I liked the working environment, I felt inspired. It was like one of those places that chooses the Pantone colors every year. So we had kind of a idea of what was trending before it actually came out. But yeah, I got laid off, and it was kind of scary for me because I was just like, I don't even know what am I gonna do.
Right.
Yeah, and then September 11th happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. When you told me this, and I'm amazed that you were there in New York at that time, like, which is a big, like, episode. Like, so tell us what that was like for you experiencing that, and also how that affected you and where you were in your life at that time.
Well, as like I said, I was still looking for another job, so I was thinking about teaching. So I was at a session, kind of like an interview kind of session, to learn more about the possibility of transitioning into that career. And I came out, it was downtown, I came out of the office, and I saw helicopters in the sky, which is not unusual for New York because, there's always filming and stuff. So I thought, oh, it's just a movie, right? And then I went to like the main street, I can't remember the name of the street right now, but like where the buses were, and to see if I could get a cab. And it was like ghost town, like there was nobody on the street. And I saw a lot of smoke in the sky, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? I don't know if I can say that, but so I finally got a cab, and then it turned, the radio is going, and they're like, they just hit the Pentagon, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, it was like Twilight Zone, like, just, it completely, it really scared me. And there were just like hundreds of people walking on the street trying to basically find their way home. So it was very, very scary. And I finally got home, I turned on the TV, and then that's when it really hit me of all the things that were happening. People preferring to fall to their death than to burn in the buildings. So it was a very scary day. I remember I had a friend who worked in the building, and my first thought was to call her to find out what happened, but she had been late that day. So fortunately she was able to turn back around, but I don't know, it completely changed my life, I think.
Yeah.
Because I was like, well, what's the point of me doing this? Like, why am I here?
And here being the U.S.
Yes. Because Jamaica, yes, of course, we have our issues. There's crime, violence, all of that. But a terrorist attack is not likely to happen here. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not likely to happen here. We might have a coup, but certainly not a terrorist attack. So it really made me kind of reevaluate like what was important to me.
Yeah.
And the guy I was dating at the time, it kind of just brought us closer together because I think everybody was traumatized, but we were both very mutually traumatized by the whole situation. And it wasn't not long after that I found out that I was pregnant.
And this was around what age?
I was 24 at the time. And it was, being a young mother, a young parent was just not something that I had planned, certainly. Like I said, the idea was to shop around my portfolio and then maybe figure out if I was going to go to grad school. But I think the whole September 11th thing really just messed with my
Mhm.
everything. Maybe I had a PTSD. I don't know.
Yes, that's real. That's real. And also, you were on a clock, right? You finished your study. The type of
Yeah.
visa you had in the US only allows you 1 year of professional development, like a job.
Yeah.
And at that point, you have to leave.
Yeah.
Or find something else to do, go back to school. So there's also that. That gives you anybody trauma as well, because
Yeah.
it's like chop chop.
Yeah, and it's not a. I mean, there are people that are able to get jobs, but it's
Mhm.
not easy.
No.
Um,
And you have to get a job in your field as well. It can't just be any job, right? You can't just say I'm gonna work at a fast food restaurant. The U.S. government says, and you have to show proof that it is in your field of study. So that's hard.
very difficult, very difficult. And I never really prioritized like networking. When you're an artist, you spend a lot of time internally.
Mm-hmm.
For me, my process really was a lot of time just being alone, thinking about what I wanted to paint or create, drawing, ideating. It's not a networking job,
Mhm.
It's not like being an accountant or in sales where you're like out there.
The rain came, and so we had to change locations a little bit, but we're still here with Kacy, and she's telling us more about her time after the trade towers got hit, and now she's considering, do I want to stay in the US? And so you're saying now you're rethinking everything, and you met a boy, and
That's a man.
you met a man. Oh, sorry.
He wasn't a boy.
He was not a boy. You met a man.
He was like 10 years older than me.
Ah, okay. So you met a man, and
Yes.
so you're here, and now you're pregnant, and we're thinking about what's next, what's happening.
Right. So because I went to Andrews, abortion was not even an option. And I really, really was happy about it.
Wait, for
Funny
you
enough.
or for just in general? Like you didn't
It
consider.
wasn't even a consideration.
Okay.
I was a Christian.
Yeah.
That was not even a consideration. So, I was very happy actually about it. And I think the pressure of what had happened, it felt like a blessing and kind of like a relief in a way. I don't know. I guess different people do stress differently. So it was a conversation that needed to be had. Like, what's the next step? I don't have a lot more time here. What am I going to do? But because it was a young relationship that just started, we had to learn how to communicate, and so it didn't quite go the way I would have liked. And we were both working out things, obviously. So I decided to move down to Florida to be with my friends. And I was very fortunate because I met a lot of people, but particularly a woman who was also a young mother that helped me. So she worked in the medical field, so she was able to help me, give birth and all, well, not physically give birth, but get me the support I needed to give birth. So that was very helpful. Because I don't know, for anybody who's had a child, they understand that childbirth can be very.
You can die.
Yes. Very
Involved.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So after I gave birth, it was kind of like, I was working for her as well as doing stuff for her, so I was kind of ingrained in her life. But I made a decision to come back home.
Wait, so at that point you didn't have like a job, but you were working for
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, it was like I decided to come back home, and I decided to come back home for many reasons. Childbirth, child rearing in America is very expensive. Even if I had gone to grad school, I would have still needed support from my parents to pay for babysitter and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother was actually had moved back home in the family home. I was just around the corner from here. And he said to me, come home. You will have support. You'll be able to come back to your childhood home. I'm upstairs, you can live downstairs. Rent free. you can work for me. Because he had a website development company at the time. That was when like tech was booming at the time. So I was like his art director. So it was really great. I mean, raising your daughter in your childhood home with my grandmother next door in the flat. I mean, I had a living babysitter basically. To be able to work and watch her take her first steps right from my desk. I mean, it was the ideal situation to raise a child, you know. And I do feel like Jamaica is much better in terms of care for children, like even medical care.
Yeah.
I think we have one of the best, like pediatricians, all of that. So I was very happy about that. I was very happy that she was able to go here instead of America. And I think all the values that she has now, I mean, are because of her life experience here. So she is American. She was born in America. Her father's American, but she's still very much Jamaican and has Jamaican values. So that's good.
So in that time though, you went back while she was growing up. So she's an adult now, but she was going to school here, and you were here for a time. But then, what happened? And then you went back for some time.
Well, so like I said, I was doing the children's book illustrator thing, but obviously there were no jobs here for that. That's not, especially at the time. Now it's very different. The creative space has opened up, but at the time, there wasn't much options for me in terms of work. So I was doing designing, graphic design, but even then, just the salary was just not enough. And there's no real growth. Even though I worked at some of the top agencies, I wasn't able to get far because there is a hierarchy. And it's still a very male-dominated field, believe it or not. I mean, at the time, maybe not so much now, but at the time, it was very male-dominated. And so I didn't feel that there was a trajectory for my career as a graphic designer. Even though I enjoyed it, after a while it became, because we don't get a lot of graphic designers don't get a lot of respect in Jamaica. And so I decided I wanted to rebrand myself, basically. And what better way to rebrand than to go and study something new and different. And so I went to Baltimore, Notre Dame of Maryland University, and I did communications. Yeah. And I was there for 2 years, meaning in the program for 2 years. It was like more for like professionals. And I lived in my brother's basement, and it was freezing cold.
Yes, Baltimore. In the basement.
He lived in Maryland, so I would have to go twice a week. I'd have to take the taxi, the train, and a bus twice a week to Baltimore. So
it's cold as dark. Also in the basement, hot air rises, so it's always colder downstairs than it is upstairs. That's all. And traveling, and Baltimore can be rough depending on where you go. It can be very
Baltimore
rough.
is rough.
Yeah.
And there was 1 or 2 nights where I missed the train, and I had to figure out where I was going to sleep. Luckily, they had a hostel that I used to go to a lot. But even that, because there are a lot of homeless people in Baltimore.
Right.
And there's a lot of drugs there too. There are a lot of cokeheads on the street. So it can be very scary. But you make sacrifices. Like you make sacrifices for growth.
Right.
And I think you had said it. Like you come from privilege, but you still struggle in America. It's not everybody's the same. It's a level playing field.
Yeah.
Unless you're loaded. I mean, you have to be loaded in order to survive there.